first things first, just so you know, I did include all the information from last semester. I moved everything over, so it's all in your Schoology still. So it's still there for reference, and it pretty much works the same way as it did last semester. It's just, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but basically I'm labeling everything now. So if it's a lesson, I'm telling you it's a lesson. If it's an assignment, I'm telling you it's an assignment. Also, if it's in red, it's an assignment that will be normally due by Fridays, okay? So today, we're not gonna jump into drama just yet because I wanna teach you guys a little bit about social emotional learning. So to develop emotional and intellectual strength by constructively reflecting on the COVID pandemic and the first semester of this school year. And today we're also gonna reflect on the previous semester in order to identify your strengths and weaknesses from the first semester of this school year. And then to articulate the emotional feelings and observations in writing through a series of guided questions. So basically, the way today's gonna work is we're gonna go through an overview of what social and emotional learning is. Then we're gonna have a discussion over COVID and then the academic school year and kind of last year. And then this is kind of important. It is due Friday, but I would prefer that you get it done as soon as possible. It says guided questions, but it's actually like a survey. Okay, so you're gonna be rating certain questions like how comfortable did you think your teachers were at the beginning of the year with technology, how comfortable were you, and then explaining your ratings, okay? It's not that many questions. Let me show you what it looks like.
That's what we need to do by Friday?
Yeah, well, you're gonna have several things to do by Friday, but, so it's right here where it says assignment. And basically, as long as you answer all the questions, it's an easy 100. As long as you answer everything, but I do want you to think deeply on the questions, answer honestly, but respectfully. So there's gonna be some questions about like, how easy is the Schoology courses for the classes, right? How many of them are good? And if they're bad, what's wrong with them? Or what makes it easy? I don't want you being like, oh, Ms. Garcia's Schoology sucks, I can't find anything, blah, blah, blah. You can say, well, some of my Schoology courses suck. If you want to, just don't give names. Now, if you want to write that Ms. Garcia is awesome, feel free. But I want you to answer them very honestly and with as much information as possible, because not only am I going to use the survey to find out how to improve my class, but I plan to share it out with other teachers because I have heard different rumblings of how difficult some of this is, okay? And so maybe we can start streamlining some of our Schoologies and the way we teach to make it easier, okay? Sound like a plan? Okay, so has anybody ever heard of social and emotional learning? Okay, so social and emotional learning is basically part of a curriculum that we tend to teach, but most of the time if we're doing it, you guys don't know what we're doing. Like you don't realize that's what we're doing, but I do believe that it's better for you guys to know what you're learning and why you're learning it, okay? So basically, social and emotional learning, according to Castle organization, which we call SEL, social and emotional learning is SEL, is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. So first off, do you guys know what empathy is? What is empathy?
Empathy is to be able to feel the emotions with someone, while sympathy is acknowledging that they have it and being like, oh, I feel sorry for you, while being empathetic is being, I'm sorry with you.
Okay, so that's kind of a good way to think of it. So a lot of times people mistake it with sympathy. Sympathy is feeling sorry for somebody, right? I can feel sorry for somebody and not understand why they feel that way. Empathy, I want you to think of it as kind of putting yourselves in their shoes, right? Let me understand why you feel that. And even if that has never happened to me, I can still empathize with you. I can try to understand why you feel this way, okay? Any questions on that? So basically, social and emotional learning is just a way for us to help you build skills to be functioning citizens, if that makes sense. Because basically it highlights these 5 components. So self-awareness, recognizing your own emotions and values as well as your own strengths and challenges, right? So if I can become in tune with myself, know what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, then I can better live my life, right? So that's what we're kind of going to be. This one we're really going to focus on because this one's kind of the foundation, right? You have to understand yourself before you can actually function out there in the world. Then responsible decision making, which is a difficult one, not just for teenagers, but adults as well, which is making ethical, constructive choices about personal and social behavior, right? We all kind of have made bad decisions before. So social emotional learning is supposed to help you figure that out. Whoever is trying to drop stuff, stop, okay? Relationship skills. Forming positive relationships, working in teams, and dealing effectively with conflict. Because everybody knows, even if you just are hanging out with one person or many, there will be times that conflict arises, right? Then we have social awareness, which is showing and understanding empathy to others outside of yourselves. Because let's be honest, human nature, we're very self-centered, right? I'm focused on what's happening to me, how I feel, right? I. Social emotional learning gets you to start looking outside of that. What's going on with the people around you? Some people would say reading the room, right? Realizing what's going on. And then self-management. Now that one is definitely one the teenagers have a problem with, which is managing emotions and behaviors to achieve one's goals, right? Because you guys are still growing, still trying to understand yourselves. Sometimes that gets a little bit hard, right? Because that's even hard for adults sometimes, especially if I'm angry. It takes a lot of self-management not to let that spill over, right? And so you definitely have to learn that. Any questions on that? So in particular today, and why it's important. So actually a lot of research has gone into this, like a lot of research. And research has found that if we teach you guys social emotional skills, right? We start at an early age. There's improvement in your social and emotional skills, your attitudes, relationships, and your academic performance. And it actually changes the perception of the people in the room, right? Because if you have social and emotional skills, we can talk about hard topics, right? We can have those in-depth discussions because we all respect each other and we know how to handle that. It also leads to a decline in student anxiety, behavior problems, and substance abuse. This would have been great for Ms. Garcia when she was in high school because I definitely suffered from both of those. And so I was all over the place, and had somebody taught me social and emotional skills, my life would have been a lot easier. And then there's long-term improvements in your skills, attitudes, pro-social behavior, and your academic performance, okay? So it all kind of ties in, and I think that this is a good way to start off the second semester because it was so chaotic this past year, okay? Any questions? Yes, no, maybe some? Okay. So today we're going to be focusing on 2 of the components. The first one is social awareness, which is the ability to take the perspective of and empathize with others from diverse backgrounds and cultures to understand social and ethical norms of behavior and to recognize family, school, and community resources and supports. So why might this be important? Why is social awareness important?
So you don't, because because usually when we're in the room with people, we have a different way we act with other people than we do with our friends. And social awareness is good because we can act good. We can act in a manner that is appropriate for other people, and not playing around like we do when we're all friends or with family. Yeah, because we definitely act different with certain people, right? We feel comfortable. We can also tie in our biases to this, right? To social awareness. How am I judging the world? But if I'm also socially aware, let's look back on 2020, right? A lot happened in society, right? A whole lot. Outside of the pandemic, a whole lot happened. What are some things that happened?
There were
Riots.
Yeah, riots, marches, protests.
Yeah, protests, right? There was the election that was very divisive, right? There was all kinds of things. And so there was an actual thing that I didn't even think of, but Coach Johnson's class brought up, was that the year was different for different cultures, right? African Americans experienced 2020 very differently than maybe a Latino experienced it versus a white person experienced it, right? We all had all these issues going on, but by becoming socially aware, maybe we can understand that, right? He brought up that he had a student, an Asian student, and they experienced 2020 very differently because they had to hear things like Kung flu, right? COVID was very different for them, the China virus. So that they experienced certain like hate or mistreatment due to that. So being socially aware opens our eyes to those things so that we can empathize. How does that feel? And if we can understand each other a little bit better, right, maybe there won't be so much tension, right? Maybe we can make some progress for that. Now, self-awareness, because even though we are very self-centered and we're very I, most people don't truly understand themselves, right? Because self-awareness is the ability to take an honest look at your life without attachment to being right or wrong, right? Because most of us are like, I'm not wrong, whatever. I make all the right decisions. Absolutely not, right? If Miss Garcia takes an honest look at her life, I made a whole bunch of mistakes. So much so that I used to joke that if it's true, you learn from your mistakes, I must be a damn genius, right? So it's the ability to look at your life and how it's going emotionally and in life, in society, and say, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? How can I fix this? How can I correct it for the betterment of myself? Okay. So, any questions on that? Okay. So all for the rest of the week, we're going to be doing SEL or social emotional learning, and hopefully it does help you. So that leads in to what we're going to be talking about today. Okay. Specifically for us, we're going to be talking about COVID and this academic school year, right, which is the 2020-2021 school year. Because by any standards, 2020 was weird and it seemed never ending, right? Like it just went on forever. And every second there was something else happening. Every time I would sit there and say, nothing else can go bad, it would go bad. And I was forever confused. And I spent a lot of time going, why? Why is all this happening? Like, what is going on, right? Every time I'd sit there and say, this has to be the worst it can get. Nothing else can happen. 2020 was like, psych, right? Here's something else. So, as much as I would like to say good riddance, and it could take the first semester with it, because let me tell you, first semester was hard for me. It really doesn't do me good to just say good riddance, right? Instead, I'd like for us to reflect on it, how that has affected us both in society and in school and as people. But of course, because I'm so extra, I'm not just going to let you just go off in the corner and reflect on that. No, it has to be guided. It has to be in depth because I always have a purpose. And even if you may not enjoy it, the discussions that we have, I do believe that they will be beneficial in the long run, okay? So always know that Ms. Garcia has a reason for everything she does, even if she's a little extra, okay? Oh, I'm so extra. Okay, so here's how it's gonna work. Step one, we're gonna go through a few discussion questions. Now, a lot of you will see discussion questions and you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to write something down, I'm gonna have to turn something in. That's not what we're doing. We're gonna have an in-class discussion and kind of just reflect on them together, the questions, but you don't have to write anything down or turn anything in. The only thing you have to do is the survey reflection. And when it talks about reflections, you're basically just answering why you rated something that way, okay? So again, this is specifically just for us to have a conversation about, not for you to turn anything in on that aspect. And then I do want us to kind of like dive deep, not just surface level. And remember that there are no right or wrong answers. It's mostly our opinions, and we do need to be respectful of them, okay? Because some of us can have strong opinions about something. We just need to be respectful. Cool? All right. So our social awareness questions, and everybody needs to participate in this, okay? So what are some of the differing perspectives within America, specifically, of the COVID pandemic? What do people think about it?
I find that a lot of people tend to think that it was this horrible thing that happened during the 2020, making it like this horrible year amongst everything else that's happening. But I think honestly, it brought a lot of people together.
Okay.
Like a lot of people that normally aren't working together, like work together, like the fight for the virus, the cure,
Mhm.
or like vaccine or whatever, and the like everybody has like this thing that they can bond over now. Like everybody, there's one thing that we can relate to is that COVID sucks. Nobody wants COVID,
Yeah.
and
Okay,
it's,
so you feel like it brought us more together.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I feel like it also showed some hate in America.
Okay.
Because we always knew racism, hate, all of that was always in America,
Mhm.
but it kind of actually let us show it even more. Because it brought people together, but it also showed how people can such disgust towards people. Because like you were saying, it kept calling the coronavirus, the Chinese virus, the Chinese virus, all of that. And I have an Asian friend, we was talking about it, how like some random white woman came up to him in Walmart and his family saying, you used to be ashamed of yourself for bringing this disease.
Yeah.
And then like things like that. So like even we say that we're America, like everyone, like we're supposed to be America. No matter who you are, you're supposed to be welcome. But it shows that there's still hate and prejudice going on to multiple different people in America.
Okay. So my question is, can both of those be true? Can they both unite us and divide us at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Because as she said, it brought us together. We're trying to find a cure, right? We're working together to conquer this. But then in reality, it did show some of the issues that were within the United States. It kind of amplified it, right? Especially when it came to like care and things like that. It also, not just racially, but economically, right? It really showed the divide between the wealthy and the poor, right? And how much that is affecting the United States. Do you think it's a divisive issue? Do you know what divisive means? Okay, so divisive means to divide. So a lot of divisive issues are like abortion, religion, gun rights, those types of things. Do you think that the coronavirus is a divisive issue in the United States?
Not good. It's debatable, definitely. Because like she was saying, it brought us together. It helps people like for us to come forward to like be with them, to like not be with them, but like to come together and try to get rid of this. But then it also divides us for hate, anti-mask people, all of that. So it has its good and bad.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of neutral because the good and bad kind of equal each other out.
Okay, so it equals each other out. Do you think that, what, you brought up masks, the anti-maskers. Do you think the mask wearing is divisive?
Oh, definitely.
I feel a lot of people who are saying that it's like a lot of they're saying it's useless. They're saying it's impairing their breathing. They're going off about all these different excuses of why it's so bad for them, and then there's the other people who are targeting them as well. I say natural selection. That's my vote. Natural selection. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, and in reality, you do have those that are saying that it's useless. Some are saying it's against their rights to have like a mask mandate. How often do we see on social media where people are arguing over masks? Right, all the time, right? People getting kicked out of the store, you know, all kinds of things. And so it's pretty obvious that America is pretty divided on the types of the way that it sees the coronavirus. Some believe actually that it's a hoax, right?
Yes.
Some believe that it's real but not as serious, right?
Everyone.
Yeah, there's some kids sit there, or like the kids in third period said that a lot of people just say, yeah, it's real, but it's like the flu, right?
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. So
I've had it. That's
yeah, okay, and there was kids in the first period class that had it, and they actually talked about how that was scary at first, the idea that they had it, you know, but it actually affects people differently. One way that I can prove that we have differing perspectives is, so my best friend, she's in the Air Force and she was stationed in Colorado. Colorado takes the pandemic very seriously. They have really strict masking rules, social distancing rules. A lot of things are closed, just hardcore restrictions. And then she got stationed in Florida. And she drove to Florida and she's like, girl, she's like, I don't think Florida knows there's a pandemic. And I said, what are you talking about? She's like, we were at the store and we were the only ones with masks on. And they were looking at us like we were crazy. She's like, they had a concert the other day and nobody had masks on. And everybody's just walking around like nothing's going on. And she's like, I feel like I'm in a different place. And I was like, obviously. So that there shows you just between Colorado and Florida, there's a massive difference. And I would honestly say that Texas is somewhere in the middle of that, right? We don't take it as seriously as Colorado, but we're not necessarily going out.
As liberal as Florida.
Yeah, we're not going doing some concerts or anything like that, right?
I am speaking of how people view it differently, and the fact of some of them are very staunch, hardcore, please wear a mask, stay 6 feet away, as opposed to those that are like, I don't want to wear a mask. I had a friend who wore the mask because he had to, but he thought that it was no different than the flu, but then he got it.
Yeah.
And then he had to be hospitalized and was on a ventilator and had to have oxygen. And he was like, after having that experience, I realized that I should have taken it more seriously, because I was looking at it from the fact of, I have to wear this mask because that's what we have to do. It's no different until it actually happens to you.
Yeah.
And he's like, you don't know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night having a panic attack because you're not sure if you're breathing. But it does affect people differently.
Yeah, and in reality too, there's also different perspectives on how we should handle it, right? Some say lock everything down, right? Nobody goes anywhere, like New Zealand literally locked everything down.
Wasn't it the UK first?
Yeah, the UK, a lot of countries did, and the United States pretty much said,
No.
we're gonna go state by state. You figure it out, right? Texas did it for a little bit, and then it opened everything up. But other people are like, no, that hurts the economy, right? So there's all these different perspectives.
There's not going to be an economy if we're all dead.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So there are people that say that, right? So how did the COVID pandemic alter your day-to-day life within Central Texas?
Masks.
My mask is gone.
I have masks over there. I have masks over there. Okay,
That
so
is natural selection. Shit, where?
over there in that counter on the shelf. So yeah, masks. Everybody in Central Texas is having to wear masks, right? What other differences happen here in like the Killeen area?
Nothing.
Like
really.
everything's closed down. Well, most places are closed down, or like closing hours have shortened, or stuff like that.
Oh, are
And
you talking about that?
the capacities.
Yeah, so like the capacity, like
Hand sanitizers everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah.
Oh, you talking about the height of it? Oh, you talking about now?
Just in general.
Oh.
Since it's happened, what has changed here? Yes. Yeah, that's true. There was all those shortages, right? Remember at the beginning when all of a sudden there was no toilet paper, right?
There was no.
No.
Why did
yeah,
everybody go for
me,
toilet paper?
I didn't understand that one either. Cleaning supplies.
Diarrhea
How
is
hard
not
was
one
it to
of
get cleaning supplies? And even just day-to-day stuff, right? One example of how it kind of affected it was, so Christmas time, right? Normally you walk into a store and there's tons of Christmas stuff, right? Aisles upon aisles upon aisles of like ornaments and
It
decorations.
feels dead.
And this year, there was like maybe 1 to 2 like aisles for it, right? I went looking for a Christmas star, couldn't find it anywhere. I went all over the place, right? And I was like, well, what happened? And they explained that it's because they were afraid people weren't going to be spent, they don't have enough money to spend on those things, that they didn't want to over order this year because they weren't going to be doing those big clearance sales to get stuff.
Didn't we skip Easter last year?
Was it Easter?
What even is Easter?
Yeah.
Easter's the
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, but
resurrection
like I
of
think
Jesus.
that's
Easter's
when
not a real
that was
holiday.
kind of like when it started. So yeah. So but also like you guys talked about going to like even eat, right? A lot of places
It's
now
based off.
you have to pick it up and go. You
Yeah.
can't sit down anymore. Even if you could sit down, it's shortened capacity. Like you can't, there's a lot of things we can't do anymore in this area. What obstacles did the COVID pandemic create for the education systems at the beginning of this year?
It made it harder for connections and teachers and ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, it never
Yeah.
And when they did it for like about a week.
Mhm.
They did in person for like a week and they had a cameras pointing
Yeah.
everywhere.
Mhm.
But they closed it like right after.
Yeah, so it's definitely a decision of whether to open or close, right? I don't know how many of you realized, but that we brought you guys back earlier than we expected.
Why?
Exactly. So what happened is,
They were threatening funding, weren't they?
yes, so there was this whole debate. So remember, education systems are run by a huge agency called the TEA, right? Texas Education Agency, and they make the rules for attendance, testing, everything that we do. Guys, seriously? So they make all those rules. So Colleen ISD originally said, we're gonna be virtual only until day X, right? That gives all the teachers time to really get everything together, figure out the technology, do all that stuff, and then we'll bring kids back. And then we realized, or the district realized, that there was thousands and thousands of pounds of kids that did not have technology. And so they were not able to access their coursework. So they held a meeting and said, we're bringing them back early. Okay, how much notice do you think teachers had?
None.
Little to none.
We had none. We found out with everybody else, okay? We're like, what? They're bringing them back. What are you talking about, right? But it was definitely juggling that. Juggling, do we continue on with these thousands of kids that can't access stuff and still stay virtual and possibly keep everybody safe? Or do we take our chances and offer some sort of learning early? Okay, so a lot of kids came back early. So it was definitely something that really got it. So what about when the pandemic started? What kind of issues do you think the education system experienced at that time?
Not kids not having technology, kids not doing their work.
Yeah, because when did it happen? You guys remember?
March.
Last year,
November, October.
Well, okay, so the pandemic started, actually some got here around there. But spring break,
Oh, yes.
in the middle of spring break, everything turned upside down, right? And all of a sudden, are we coming back? We're not coming back. What are we gonna do, right? What kind of problems do you think that created for school districts like Columbia?
Panic.
In my school, like the school year was canceled in spring break, so no kids had to take finals more.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't like you guys were at school and we could prepare you and say, hey, we're going virtual, make sure you have tech, this is how we're gonna run things. It literally happened during spring break. Were the classes the same?
No.
No, what did Colleen go to?
EDU.
The EDU, Ingenuity, right?
Ingenuity, I mean,
How different was Ingenuity from regular school?
completely.
Completely,
But
right?
you look up all your answers.
I prefer it.
Yeah, a lot of kids preferred it, right? But you really didn't have teachers, right? Like we were your teacher, but we were more for, hey, miss, can you move me forward? Hey, miss, can I get a redo, right? I would actually get a lot of emails because even today I get emails that say, hey, miss, you're the only teacher that responds. Can you help me with X, Y, and Z, right?
For real, I cannot get in contact.
So yeah, I don't know how many times I got different emails saying, hey, I'm stuck on my Spanish thing, but I can't get a hold of anybody. Can you send it?
You don't
figure it
know
out?
Spanish?
No, I would have to find that teacher for
Oh,
them. Okay, so yeah. But basically, the struggles were, we weren't really prepared, right? Is the American school system, is it set up to be strictly virtual?
no.
See, American school systems even
No, right? The American school system is a very slow moving entity, being, organization. So to have to flip on a dime like that, it's pretty hard, right? And then we came back, and then the school systems, we were told we could go virtual, but you had to have a certain percentage of students that had tech. But you also had to allow students to be able to come on campus, right? So they're having to figure out how to do all of this within the guidelines. Okay, so considering that, what challenges do you think teachers encountered during the first semester due to the pandemic?
They weren't able to reach everybody.
Weren't able to reach anybody? Some of them did think that they were gonna lose their jobs, right? Because it was very much a choice, right? It was a choice. You either show up and do your job and take the risk, right? because in reality, I have 90-something students, and then I'm an ESL teacher, so I have access to over 200 students. I take my risk in coming into this building every day and keep my job,
Her,
or I stay safe and stay home,
keep your job.
right?
But
It might
then you're not
be-
making money.
Huh?
But then you're not making money.
Exactly, then I'm not making money. So now I
Is
can't
it
support
really
my
a
family.
choice?
So again, it's not a choice, right?
Wait, you don't make money?
If you stay home, no. So that was what a lot of teachers actually did come up against, right? Especially think of your older teachers that are sick, or maybe have diabetes, right? Or have somebody at home
Yeah, it is.
that can't afford to get sick, right? Because there are certain teachers that have, children or husbands or wives that are autoimmune disposed, and so therefore they're high risk. But you need your job, right? So teachers are struggling with that. What other things could teachers be struggling with at the beginning of the semester?
Home.
Trying-
Adapting to
trying
like
to know
the
what to
new
say.
systems and stuff.
Adapting to the new systems, their home lives, right? Because we are parents too, right? So if I'm being forced to come back to work, but I don't want to send my kids to school because I want to keep them home, well, that's not always an easy idea, right? And then, so for example, my family, right? I work for Killeen ISD. My son goes to Coppers Cove ISD. My mother works in Leander ISD. And my sister was a college student. So we were trying to figure out how are we all going to juggle the way the different places are handling the pandemic and coming back. The adapting to the new system. How do you think that affected teachers?
Poorly.
Probably
Some didn't.
different than others.
Different or
Not
other?
only did you guys get little to no warning that this is what we were doing, but then out of nowhere you have to take this sudden crash course and have to figure out how to get all of these kids in here and keep them on track and engaged.
Exactly.
And it doesn't exactly look good on you guys whenever kids aren't turning in their stuff and failing.
Yeah.
So it reflects poorly on y'all, not only the students, and it's
Yeah.
overall bad time.
I was gonna feel like I was not too bad at COVID. You know,
Yeah.
I think that really pushed me through.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that.
Well, so let's, and the technology, you said we had little to no training. So before, like last year, right? The last school year. How many teachers do you really think had access to technology for everybody in their class?
Not a lot.
None.
Not a lot,
much.
right? Most of your classes did not have tech, right? If you wanted to use tech, they had to sign up for a lab or go to the library, right? I was lucky because I'm ESL and I had tech. So my kids had access to laptops, and then I also have an iPad that was assigned to me. And I've received extensive training in Schoology, right? Which is why my Schoologies look the way that they do. Because I had a year-long training for Schoology, and I also went and taught myself how to do these things, right?
Sure.
They took a survey at the beginning of the year asking who thought that they were comfortable enough with Schoology to not only do it, but show other people how to do it. Out of the entire school, how many people do you think that was?
Not many.
Just take a guess.
You.
How many? Okay, out of how many? How many? Like
Where there's over
teachers?
100 something teachers here.
I like it.
I'd probably give like a little below half.
I'll say 10.
I think so.
I'd say like 30%.
Okay.
I'd say like
Wait, what was the
You were
question?
closest. There was 11 of us. There was 11 of us that felt comfortable enough with Schoology to not only handle our classes and get it going and running, but maybe help other teachers figure it out too.
11 how many teachers?
Over 100. Okay.
Anyway.
So that's something different, right? Especially if you've been a teacher for a very long time and you already know your lessons, right? I know what I'm going to teach. I'm going to do this and that. I was lucky because I had tech. A lot of my lessons were already here. And I just had to tweak them, right? It was a little different because I really didn't teach English 2 last year until the second semester. So first semester, I really didn't have stuff for you. I had to create. But still, I like doing this stuff, right? I geek out when I do this, and I'm like, oh, I could put this, I could do this, right? Total nerd when it comes to this stuff. But a lot of teachers, they didn't use tech, and they've been doing their jobs for years and years and years, and they have lesson plans that they follow. And now all of that has to go here in this so that you guys can have access to it, right? So that can be pretty stressful, right? So there was definitely a lot of stress and a lot of worry. What are some of the key differences during the school day from the 2019 school year to now? During the first semester, what were some of the differences you guys saw? Like day-to-day school.
No max.
Wait, like,
You didn't have to wear masks before, right? No, that was definitely not a thing.
Activities were open.
Yeah, before everything happened, yeah.
There's no
So
clubs.
there was, the activities were open, right? There's not as many clubs now, right? Those of you that were in sports, there was this whole huge debate. Do we have sports? Do we not have sports? Do we allow audiences? Do we not allow an audience? Is the band gonna go? Is the band not gonna go? Is it, like there was all these things. Your class sizes are definitely different, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Class sizes?
Yeah, your class sizes. Last year, during this time, in the English 2 class, every single seat would be filled
Ooh, but in this classroom?
in this classroom.
Oh, I'm glad.
Every single seat. Actually, I've removed some chairs. It would be packed. You could barely walk in here.
That's kind of.
That-
dirty, though.
Huh?
Like, from the mask, like, the dirty.
I did. So there is a perk, right? There is the perk that is smaller class sizes, so I get to know you guys better. Yes.
Do you think the school, the learning district and Texas ever gonna let you to be online if you want to, or is it gonna obligate you to always come to school?
Well, in reality, right now you can be online.
No, I mean like later in the years.
That is a question that people do have, because I mean, so first of all, do you realize how many options there are for you guys
For what?
as a student to learn?
It's true, right?
It sounds like there's 2, but there's actually 3. Okay, so there's in person, right, which is y'all that are in here. Then there's synchronous virtual, which means they show up for my Zooms and they sit in my Zooms while I teach and they actually participate sometimes, right? They talk to me. That mostly happens in my first and my third period, right? Nobody really shows up to this one. And then there is asynchronous virtual, which means you pretty much do it on your own, right? That's why I upload videos. That's why I do those things, because they go back, they watch the videos, and they're kind of doing it on their own. They message me when they need help, right? So that's pretty different, isn't it? And in reality, going back and forth is pretty,
Virtual and in person.
yeah.
I feel like
Well,
it's still the same.
It's kind of, but there's some that truly show up for the synchronous, and especially at the lower levels, they're required to show up at a certain time, right? Like my son has to show up at a certain time every day for his Zoom, okay? High schoolers, we don't really do that. But that's definitely different, isn't it? Because in reality, y'all can flip back and forth within a couple of days, right? So that's pretty different. Do you think that's easy for teachers?
Nope.
No, right? It's not as hard for me because I everything that we do in here is expected from the virtual kids. Everything the virtual kids do, you guys do. But there are some teachers that have vastly different things for their virtual kids versus their in-person kids, right? So that could be a big difference. Are there any other differences?
I feel like the in-person kids get taught better, depending on the learning style.
Mm-hmm.
One, if you're at home, it's very susceptible that you're going to cheat and just copy paste and you're not going to learn. Or 2, not having that person there to be there at the times that you have the questions, and then by the time you move off of the thing that you had the question on, you forget to even check about it later.
Yeah.
And then while you're in person, you have that person there. You get one-on-one time. It's just a lot more personalized, I feel,
Okay.
than virtual.
It's also like important for like the mentality of the student, because you get a social
Yeah, there's a social aspect of it. So there very much is a divide between the virtuals and the in-person, right? So here's a question. Do you think that more is expected from the in-person students?
Yes.
You think so? Yeah, right? Because I can sure gripe at you guys if you don't turn things in, right? It's a little bit harder for me to get a hold of some people, right?
Yeah, all you have to do is just delete.
Yeah, so
Never existed.
So I can literally gripe at you guys more often. What about tech use? How's that different?
They don't gotta Well, yes, because since you're in person, you can say get back on task, but
Yeah.
you can't really monitor them.
Yeah.
And so they can just do whatever and no one really know unless
But let's think about how, so in prior years, I was never one to really do it, but I would say, put your phone down, face down, don't be looking at it, pay attention to me, right? Some teachers would say, no phones in their class, no computers in their class, right? Can we do that now? No, right?
Don't do that, honey.
I really can't even do it when I sit there and I see them playing pool on their phone or amongst us, and they're like, but I'm working, really? I can see your TV. Like, yeah, they do it all the time, right? They're even talking about it, and then I'm like, what are you doing with your phone? Oh, but I'm working. I'm working, miss. No, you're not, right?
he's working on his
You know what you're
skills.
saying to that? Show me what question you're on.
Yeah, so, but we have been pretty much told as teachers, like, that's their tech, right? Our kids need their tech so that they can function in our class because our classes are supposed to be on Schoology, right?
Oh, that got super.
So what about some of the teaching styles of your teachers? Has that changed?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. I've done both the virtual and the in-person side of things. I feel like even in the same classes, the teaching styles are different. Like they just treat the virtual kids different.
Okay. So definitely treat them different.
Yeah, and I feel personally, I learn more in person than I do out of person.
Yeah.
Or virtual out.
Yeah. Yeah, so you learn better in person. Yeah, and some kids have said that their teachers just turn on videos now, right? Because it's supposed to all be online. Because we're supposed to be equitable. You know what that means?
You can see. Nope. I'm going
Equitable is the same across the board. Okay, so my class would be considered equitable because what I expect of you, I expect of my virtual kids and vice versa. I open my Zoom so they can do in-class person with us, and then I record it and I put it online so that they get the same instructions as everybody else, right? There's no difference. But other classes are not necessarily like that, right? So that is definitely a change. So any questions on those? Okay. Self-awareness. Remember, this is more specific to you. So we were talking about teachers and schools in Texas. Now we're kind of trying to bring it back in. And so what has the pandemic, what kind of change has it made to your everyday life outside of school?
Definitely making sure I'm definitely working than usual because I'm always around my great grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if they ever catch it, that could be life threatening. They could actually die from that. And I live with my grandmother, and if she has it, she has a lot of different illnesses too. She could definitely die from that. So I gotta make sure I gotta stay clean or else it's gonna be bad.
So you definitely have to be more cautious in your life. Okay. In your outside life. Anybody else? Was there any changes outside of school?
I also had to be very careful with my family because my dad is in the army, and if he gets sick, then they have to close them all together.
Oh, okay.
And my mom could also work from there, so that's awesome. Like, includes a bunch of things.
Okay, so you guys are starting to see how your reach is farther than just inside your family.
For me, it affects like both the home life and the school life because like when my mom, she's a home care nurse, and she does pediatrics, and like whenever she switches cases, like she has to make sure that like COVID is completely like out of the question because of like how immune these kids are that she's taking care of.
Yeah.
And so it's literally a life or death situation for these children, and it's that, and like now, like if any of us get sick, we have to stay quarantined in our rooms.
Yeah.
You can't even leave our room.
Yep. So definitely like so it's affecting both your home and your school life. Yeah. Okay, so for you guys have to be careful because it could affect your aunt's life, right? And I had a similar situation. So when the pandemic all hit and they said we were coming back to school, my stepfather was supposed to get heart surgery, right? My stepfather was supposed to get heart surgery, and my cousin's on a transplant list for her liver, right? So the idea that if I got sick and then I went to my mom's house because she takes care of my son and he gets sick or my cousin gets sick, that's a big issue, right? So I had to be much more careful with what I was doing. And at one point, when all the teachers got sick here before you guys came back, I was in close contact. I didn't get sick, but I was quarantined for 14 days. And because I was quarantined for 14 days, I couldn't have my son. So my oldest had just gone off to the Navy, and now I can't have my youngest son. He's not home and he's crying, right? That he wants to come home. So it definitely changes your home life, right? It's changing the way that we interact with each other, even at home. Okay. So, and then that kind of flowed into how it impacted your own family. A lot of you are having to be super careful because you guys come to school and you're with hundreds and hundreds of students, right? And teachers, and then you go home, and if you guys get sick, then you could get other people sick.
That's we had an uncle who died from COVID.
Yeah. So you had an uncle. Yeah, and there's another student where he had gotten sick, and then his dad got sick, and he's on a ventilator now, right? So, and even when it was amongst the teachers, right? Some of them were fine. It was like the allergies, and then another one was not so good, okay? So in terms of the pandemic, which of the following impacts has had the most effect on your family? The social impact, the educational impact, the financial impact, or the health and mental impact? Financial impact?
My grandmother, she has her own business, and she sells furniture, and so that impacts her very much a lot.
Yeah.
If she gets sick, that's all that money can't have because.
Or even if they close, right? When we locked down, they closed that business, right? A lot of people lost their jobs during the pandemic, right? Or even now are still struggling financially. Even with the idea that these are not free, right? Most of the time, masks aren't free, right? Cleaning supplies aren't free. Definitely not anymore. They're expensive, right? Even hand sanitizer, right? Who in the world would have thought we'd been spending so much money on hand sanitizer? So that's definitely one. So how about the other ones? Were there any other impacts for you and your family? Social, educational?
Kind of all of them.
All of them? This is a big one for a lot of my classes, the mental health impact.
Yep.
Yeah, because it got really hard, right? There are some people that thrived because, as my son said, he was made for this life because he's a gamer and an introvert, and so he's like, I'm good in my room, I'm fine, right? All the other guys in his barracks are going crazy, and he's like, I'm good, right? I was semi okay because I'm an introvert with extroverted tendencies, right? So I'm cool just chilling and watching Netflix and being a nerd all my life. But I wanted to go out every once in a while. But then we had other teachers that were extreme extroverts, and they were like climbing the walls, right? Climbing the wall. They wanted to get out. They were like, I just need to go to like a restaurant, something. So this definitely, it also made a lot of people more anxious, right? Because now you are having to be hyper vigilant, right? I can't just go to hang out with my grandparents anymore, right? You're having, or, with your mom, you have to be careful. Who was I around, right? So, especially when it came to the holidays, because it's not like we could just go anywhere we wanted to anymore. Okay, so considering all that, do you think that your family needed more or less support due to the pandemic? More support? Yeah, in a lot of ways we did. So some families actually, they started to thrive, right?
Wait, who?
Like some families thrived during the pandemic. They realized that they were very self-sufficient and they didn't really need as much, right? So some, like, for example, my classes were used to being online, right? They were used to being online because I was teaching online anyways. And then what would happen was when we went virtual, they didn't need as much support from me because they already knew what to do. So, okay. We're going to go ahead and stop there, but make sure you finish your survey, guys. Again, it's an easy 100. And if you have any questions, let me know.